Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this special panel that we have going on during our virtual social justice bootcamp week. My name is Lorreen Pryor, and I will serve as your moderator today. We have a special one for you guys. We have some young Black and elected, joining us today. We're going to talk Black politics. We're going to talk what we should be doing in our communities to make the changes we're demanding to see. So without further ado, let me go ahead and let's pull up Jacory Arthur. Let him introduce himself first. Welcome, family.
Peace, love, and justice to anyone and everyone. My name is Jacory Arthur. I'm a professor at Louisville, Kentucky's local HBCU, Simmons College of Kentucky. I'm also a musician known as 1200. I'm a teacher around our public schools known as Mr. Arthur. And as of a month ago, I was elected as Louisville's youngest city councilman in Louisville Metro Council District 4, which represents downtown and all of the surrounding neighborhoods. So it's by far the most powerful district, but also the most poor, most homeless, most segregated, most starved district. I'm here to fix all of that. So glad to be here.
Perfect. Thank you for coming. I'm so excited that you're here. Let's go to Mayor Hollingsworth. Welcome to the party.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. I'm Candace Hollingsworth, mayor of the city of Hyattsville, which we are a small municipality right outside of Washington, D.C., about 2 miles northeast. Growing city, definitely a lot on our plate, very diverse. But at the same time, while we have the majority of our population is minority or Black and Hispanic, the majority of our electorate is white. So definitely deal with issues of having to negotiate the powers of passing agendas and policies that influence and improve Black lives, but at the same time, recognizing that there's pushback and negotiation that you have to make in order to do that. But in another capacity, I also serve with Wes as national co-chair of Our Black Party, which is a political organization that has our sole mission is to advance policies that power the Black agenda. And so I'm excited to be here in community and conversation with each of you, and I look forward to the conversation.
Well, fantastic. We're glad that you're here. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. Can we go to Dr. Wes Bellamy, please?
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Wes Bellamy, or Dr. Wes Bellamy, however I'm being called on a particular day. First and foremost, shout out to Ms. Pryor, Mrs. Pryor, and BYLP, all my folks out there in Cali and Sacktown. Love y'all. I wish we could be there together, but, virtually at work. Much love to all of the great work that you all are doing. My name is, again, Dr. Wes Bellamy. I'm the former vice mayor of Charlottesville, Virginia, and I currently serve as the national co-chairman of Our Black Party, a political platform focused on our people, our agenda, and centering our needs. I'm also the political science department chairman at Virginia State University, the youngest political science department chairman in our state, as well as the youngest elected in our city's history, former elected in our city's history. So really happy to be here with y'all, and let's show some love to our people. Let's get free.
I'm trying to get free. Let's do it. Last but not least, let's go to Representative Jewel Jones.
Hey, family. Hope all is well. I'm happy to be here. See all these powerhouses I'm on a call with, as well as you, big sis. Just from the great state of Michigan. I'm currently a state representative. Yesterday, I just had my last primary as a state representative here in the great state of Michigan. Ran unopposed by the grace of God. So I'm getting ready to start my last term before I retire at the ripe age of 27, I believe, in a couple more years. But alongside my brother, Dr. Wes Bellamy, I do have the privilege of being the youngest person who was on my city council in my hometown of Inkster, as well as the youngest state legislator ever in the state of Michigan. But I'm getting older now. So
I see a shout out to you already, Hakeem.
Oh, Lord.
Let's get it started, because there's a lot of things that we need to talk about, because I've heard the words Black agenda. I heard, let's get our needs met so we can get free. So I think where I want to start is, what exactly does that mean? And I'll jump into, can I go to Jacory Arthur? What does it mean to focus on our needs and for us to get free? Let's start there.
Well, when it comes to focus, it's important to address the fact that we largely have not focused. Earlier today, I just quoted Yvette Carnell from the ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery movement, about the phrase BIPOC being worthless. And got some people in their feelings about it, because there's this sense of unity that everyone wants to have with other races. And the specific example that we were using was about inclusion in the arts, and they were saying, here's a list of people who have tried to create opportunities for Black artists. And I shared with them a study that showed over the past 15 years, Asians, Pacific Islanders, and the Hispanic community have increased their inclusion in American professional orchestras by over 50%. Meanwhile, Black people have not improved, and we've had less than 2% of representation in that field. And that's just a microcosm of a larger issue, which is about freedom, and it's really about inclusion. And that inclusion means being very specific about who we're including and how we are included. So socially, politically, economically, we have lacked being included over the course of my life, and I'm 28, and I know it's gone way beyond our lifetime. So I'm here to make sure that we have that inclusion. And more importantly than anything else, that inclusion is economic. We are on the bottom of a country that we built, and it's largely because we are wealthless. And we need to make sure that we have as much wealth, and reparations is an important conversation that I'm sure we'll have beyond this call.
Thank you for that. Mayor Hollingsworth, what would you say? What does that mean to you, making sure our needs are met so that we can get free?
Yeah, so I think it starts with understanding what it means to be free. And then part of being free means getting your needs met, right? So one of the things that we definitely start to hear now around, let's talk about spaces for Black women in particular, right? We say focus on self-care, and how for many people that is a very radical thing. It is something that folks aren't used to doing, or putting or prioritizing their own needs first. And it feels very selfish, because it's everything you've been taught essentially up to that point has been to look out for other people, and that focusing on yourself is too much, right? For Black folks to be free, that means being comfortable with putting our self-interest first and above the interests of everything else. And so we focus on the policies that we need that address our interests, that act to our benefit, that we focus on making the partnerships and the allyships and the alliances that we need, that are focused and centered on our needs first, or at least make sure that we get something out of the arrangement. And I think for too long, we really haven't. We've been kind of in this position where we assume that our goodwill is enough to get people on our side to help work with us towards our liberation. And that is proven to be ineffective. And so for us, we have to start with putting our needs first. That is the key to liberation and to our freedom as people.
Got you. So Dr. West Bellamy, what as an elected, can you describe for the people what are our needs that need to be put first?
Well, I think it's important for us to understand that Black folk aren't a monolithic group. So when I was listening to my brother Jacory talk, I was very intrigued by his stance, not only in regards to demanding reparations, but listening to my sister Mayor Candace, and even what I know my brother Joel is going to say moving forward. Our needs are different within each and every community in which we frequent. What I do think, though, is universal is the need for us to not only own our politics and own our voice, and also we need to own our resources. I think every local government, every state government, all federal governments, and the federal government as a whole owes Black people an equitable coin of sorts. So on the local level, what that looks like is we're calling for, as our Black Party, a commission on African American advancement in every municipality across the country, so that people within their own communities can let us know exactly what they're demanding and what their needs are. When you look at on the state level, from our Black Party, we're calling for a chief equity officer in all 50 states. And then even on the federal level, we're looking to advocate for 1,000 new Black elected officials on all 3 tiers, because again, that's school board, from school board to city council to state reps to congressional members and so forth. There needs to be a change. For me personally, when I think about what are some of the needs within our communities, I look at items such as income inequity. So for example, when we talk about our people and what they need on the ground, there's definitely a need to increase capital for Black businesses. There's definitely a need for us to increase Black home ownership. There's definitely a need for us to create generational wealth. There's definitely a need for us to be able to arm and protect ourselves and our family and loved ones. I'm a firm believer in Black folks supporting the Second Amendment right. Obviously, we're in support of common sense and good gun laws, but there's nothing wrong with Black folk supporting ourselves and taking care of ourselves, defending ourselves. There's nothing wrong with Black people owning our school curriculums. And when I say own our school curriculums, ensuring that the knowledge is being imparted on our people and our true history is being taught. So all of those things are needs, as well as a need for, citizen and civilian review boards across the country and defunding the police, ending qualified immunity and so forth, all things we're advocating for with our Black Party. But more than anything else, and I'll just shut up with this, more than anything else, we have to focus on loving ourselves. We have to focus on not being afraid of ourselves. We have to focus on working collectively, not necessarily agreeing on everything, but working collectively to ensure that we center ourselves and we do what's best for our communities first. If I love my brother, I've never met Jacory, but I love him. I know Jewel, I know Candace, I know you, Lorreen. I love all of y'all. And if I love you, I value you. And if I love you and value you because you look like me, and I value you because you look like me, I'm willing to give you what I have in order for you to succeed. And I hope that that would be reciprocated. And those are some of the things I think we need in the immediate. And I believe that we have the people in place to get there. It's just about us getting on the same kind of playing field to move this vehicle forward.
Right. And so, like, when you say that we have to get on the same page about everything, we do have to acknowledge that all skin folk and kinfolk. Can we do
Correct.
that first? Okay. So,
no doubt. And we're not a monolithic group. We're not, we don't all think the exact same way. When I say the same page, I mean that there are certain things that we can agree on. And again, I think that even though we're different, we can agree that we have to love each other. We can agree that we want to make sure that our communities are put first. Now, what that looks like may be different, but I want to just all be able to agree that I value you. I want to be able to agree that I love you. And when I do that, then we can work together in a wide variety of ways, even when we disagree, because we're not supposed to agree on everything.
Right. And I get that. And so what I would ask, and I would pose this to Representative Jones, I've noticed that even on your social media, you've been kind of putting up some controversial statements, and people have been coming for you. And I know we've spoke kind of behind the scenes in the chat or in the private messages, but what do you think that's all about? Because I heard, folks really kind of come at you for some of the things that you were sharing. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I think the key here really is that knowing, like, a lot of times, like, Black folk have been going through so much for so long, and sometimes it's important to take time and mourn for different things, or to just take a break from life sometimes. But I'll be asking some kind of questions that sometimes people think might not be might be a little insensitive, just because of the current climate of things. Like, I posed a question about someone had sent me a post, and I asked Black on Black crime, asked about Black on Black crime, and said that Black lives don't matter until we actually start addressing the issue that's happening in our neighborhoods across the country. And so people didn't feel like that was the right time, because I believe it was probably a few days after Brother Floyd had just been murdered. And so, people wanted some time to grieve and to mourn on that, and to focus on that situation, to focus on police brutality. And also saying that, that's the white community poses that question when we bring up police brutality and why, everyone is out to get us. And, I think I've become desensitized to the degree where I feel like we should have any conversation relevant to the Black community at any given time that we feel like we need to have it. Truly, I think this is important, because nothing's ever going to stop until we begin to address it. And it's not going to get addressed by going to the same people that continue to harass us, continue to kill us, continue to divide us and destroy us. We have to figure out, how do we build a sense of community ourselves? And so, in the same vein that Dr. Bellamy was talking about, us just being able to love one another. And, if we just had that simple practice of loving one another, we really can't even experienced, the multitude of issues that we experience in our own neighborhoods as far as it relates to us committing violence against one another, because we simply say, hey, that's my brother, that's my sister. Instead of doing anything to harm them, I'm gonna do everything conducive towards their growth, conducive towards their life. I'm doing everything that's gonna make sure that they are gonna make it right along with me and my family. And so I think people have their emotions, and that's rightfully so. But at the same time, I'm going to continue to push the narrative of thinking that, at any given time, we need to be having these kind of conversations, and we need to be having some action regarding building a sense of community amongst ourselves.
Got you. So we've seen a lot of headlines. I mean, I think that the first real headline that I saw in regard to what is going on in our cities, especially with respect to white supremacy, I believe it was the tiki torches and the folks that went into West's backyard in Charlottesville. And now we find ourselves here again, and the call is for officers to be arrested for the death of Breonna Taylor, which is right there in Jacory's backyard. So can we talk about, I know a lot of people see things on the news or they see things being written. What is it like to be in the places where these incidents actually took place? And what is the general feeling of the people in those places? Because we can't speak for them. We only know what we're reading or what the media is telling us. So let me start with Dr. Bellamy, and then I'll go over to Jacory, since yours is more recent than what happened in Charlottesville. But that was kind of like the time that the masks really came off and we really got to see who we were actually dealing with out loud, because they do a lot of things behind the scenes. So can we talk about what it's like to be in those hotbeds when these incidences are actually occurring?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's important to understand that these are just manifestations of what our nation has always been. America was rooted in white supremacy. Our country and our nation was founded on white supremacy. It was founded on the treachery of people thinking that they had the right to own other folks and take what was already here and make it theirs. So I think that essentially what we saw in Charlottesville literally was just people believing that they were not going to allow a young Black man. I was the only Black city councilor at the time and the youngest. We're not going to allow this. And I mean, these are things that was literally said to me. We're not going to allow this young Black blank, blank, blank change our community. This is ours. These statues are ours. This city is ours. And this is what it's been, and this is what it's always going to be. And the vitriol and the pushback that came because of us daring to say that we're willing to do something different, well, it manifested in people coming with tiki torches. It manifested in the Klan coming on my 1-year wedding anniversary to have a protest, and then subsequently them having one of the largest white supremacy rallies that our nation's seen in recent years with the Unite the Right rally. However, I think that even in the midst of all of that, there's an opportunity for our folks, and when I say our folks, I mean all people within our community, to be able to stand together and say that we're going to fight back. You don't always have to fight back with your fists, and more importantly, I think it's important for us as elected officials and those who are leaders to fight back by reallocating resources to our community. If we really want to get these individuals back, we don't got to beat them with these. We can beat them with the policy and in the budgets and make sure that our folks in our communities get the resources that they need in order to make our communities a better place. Again, I'm no longer in office, but I was very clear, and everyone knew this while I was in. My focus is always going to be first and foremost on my people. I love everybody, and I have an obligation to serve everyone within this community, but there's nothing wrong with me prioritizing my people first, because I am one of us first and foremost. And then secondly, our people have consistently received the shortest end of the stick. So during the time, I remember people saying to me, I'm single-handedly destroying the Commonwealth of Virginia. I'm destroying Thomas Jefferson's land. But now you see 3 years later, everyone, they come up to me every day. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for the work that you were doing. We were kind of on the forefront of it. And I think it was all worth it. The bomb threats that we had at my daughter's school and the threats that we've had at our home and whatnot, those things weren't fun to go through. But in hindsight, it made our community a better place. It made my family, a stronger unit. And as Black people within our community, we truly were able to come under the regime of Thomas Jefferson and to realize our own power. And I think that's what all of this is about. We come together and we unify by understanding the power and the leverage that we already have. And I'll just show some love to my brothers and sisters and those who don't identify out there in Louisville. You see them doing just that. And I appreciate all the freedom fighters who are out there rocking and riding.
Jacory?
Breonna Taylor is one of countless Black American descendants of slavery who has suffered at the hands of police terrorism. In the 1820s, when the Louisville Police Department was first founded, it was solely created to maintain, regulate, and patrol the slave population. You fast forward 100 years after that, we got our first Black policeman. His name was William Woods. He was killed in the line of duty by a white drug addict for mistaken identity. And when you fast forward 100 years after that, Breonna Taylor's being killed for the exact same type of situation. She was killed the night that a handful of warrants were executed, no-knock warrants, one of which was to obtain a property by our city's local government to gentrify that neighborhood. Majority of the homes in this block, and by majority, I mean like if there's 30 homes on the block, our government owns 20 of them. They were trying to obtain this address so that they could help gentrify the neighborhood, a neighborhood that I live in, the poorest neighborhood in this city where over half of the residents live in poverty, 52.7%. So Breonna Taylor is a victim of gentrification. She's a victim of white supremacy. She's a victim of being an American descendant of slavery. And I truly believe that if we had our reparations, our repair from centuries of injustice that includes slavery and Jim Crow and redlining, she would be alive today, because our local media has deemed her as some sort of drug queen pin. But if you have wealth, you don't have to resort to selling drugs. You don't have to resort to kicking somebody's door in. And I appreciate my brothers talking about love, but love doesn't mean anything when my kids don't have anything to eat.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do anything I can by any means necessary to put food on the table and to pay my bills.
Yeah.
White supremacy isn't just a white guy or boogeyman in a sheet. It's my kids not being able to eat. And that's why we have to keep understanding that reparations for the Black American descendants of slavery, that's like a non-starter. We're not talking about fixing us in terms of justice, in terms of economic justice, then everything else doesn't matter. Because I can't love you if I can't take care of my family.
Mm-hmm.
I can't advocate for policy. I can't even put Black elected officials in office without people threatening them and talking crazy about them, because I can't support those Black elected officials. I went through dozens of endorsement surveys by white institutions, none from Black institutions. And that's exactly why when we put people in office, our people in office, they don't work for us, because they don't get put in office by our dollar. They don't get put in office by our interests. So then we got folks who get in office and turn around and advocate for every single other group. I'm here to make sure I advocate for us. And thankfully, I have integrity to not let those other groups knock me off my square. But so many Black elected officials have to deal with that, and they don't have that same integrity. They are beholden to that white dollar, to that white special interest that put them in office. And I think that we see a new day with someone like me being elected, with someone like even Sister Corey being elected over in Ferguson. It's a new day, and we're here to make sure that justice drum is being beat. But reparations is the root of everything that we're talking about. Because if you can put something to live for and something to live in your life, it's going to be a completely different situation for Black Americans.
So when we talk about reparations, let's just get into it, because Victoria Baldwin asked, what is your specificity on reparations for ADOS, which is American Descendants of Slavery? What do you all think about that? Do you support reparations for ADOS?
Y'all know where I stand.
We know where you stand. All right, let's talk to Mayor Hollingsworth. What is your feeling, or what do you think about reparations for ADOS?
So unequivocally, absolutely, yes. The thing that has been so interesting to me is these headlines, right? When folks are like, "Oh, Asheville passes law on reparations," and you read the article, and people have this really jacked up perception of what reparations mean. Reparations isn't simply reallocating dollars from one place to another. And if that's the case, we've been having reparations for the past 50 years. We've been reallocating resources over and over for different purposes. But that's not what reparations means. That's not what the value it is to bring, what it brings to Black people in this country. when you look at policy positions that are proposed by candidates, particularly candidates at high levels, but at all levels, it's like they skirt around, and I say we because I'm an elected official, so I can't divorce myself from a system that I'm functioning in. Okay, so we like to say, oh, we're going to propose this policy to address hunger. We're going to open the avenues for people to get more food, or we're going to open the avenues to build wealth by creating a tax credit for down payment assistance or something like that. When fundamentally it is a money problem. Like, people seek credit. Why? Because they don't have money. People can't buy houses. Why? Because they don't have money. Right. People are, when we're talking about, undervaluate or devaluation of properties, that's one of the most simplest ways to start getting people back the wealth that they've lost, is by returning that wealth that any other family, particularly a white family, might get in their home across the way. Return that wealth times generations to the family across the street. But we try to skirt around the fact that the problem, the fundamental, the center of all the problems that we have is a lack of resources, and specifically a lack of money. And so until we really address that, we're going to continue to have policies that try to address other symptoms, and without being bold enough and forward enough to say, let's fix money. Let's make sure, beyond reparations, we also need to have guaranteed income. We also need to have guaranteed jobs programs, in addition to making up for the wealth that has been lost over years.
So when you say lost, I guess we got to qualify that. Do we mean stolen or just not given?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Dr. Bellamy, since you're the national co-chair of our Black Party, can you talk to, one, whether you support reparations, and two, will you all be adding that to your agenda on your website?
Yeah, we unequivocally support reparations. And if I'm not mistaken, if we don't have it on the website, we're going to talk to our web designer about that today. I think that one of the things in which we've been able to operate from a model of is that we've seen, not necessarily as some individuals call it before, in terms of them saying, hey, as Candace was alluding to, we have reparations and there's no policy behind it. There's no resources allocated to it. One of the things that we've been able to do in Charlottesville, and we've seen this duplicated in Baltimore and Albany, New York, and other places, we created something known as the equity package. And within that, we were able to allocate nearly $4 million in resources to underserved communities, and specifically looking at and targeting Black communities. And then subsequently, we had the Business Equity Fund, which is for Black-owned businesses to be able to allocate nearly $30,000 in resources to them to either scale up or start their business at a 1% interest rate. And all of these resources are backed by our local government. I think that when we talk about reparations, again, we're all for it. It's all about how we bring this forward. And I think we have to be very strategic in the way in which we get and extrapolate those resources from local budgets, state budgets, and even federal budgets for that matter, to bring them to our communities. One of the things that I'm really weary about is, even in the discussion about reparations, is that the resource is not getting to our folks. So people saying that, yeah, like we're going to allocate resources, we're going to give you money, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, but that money doesn't get to the hood. Like, let's be real about this. Like, it's not getting into the hands of the people who need it. What we did in Charlottesville is that we ensured that if you lived in these public housing sites, so for example, we allocated $50,000 for anybody who lives in public housing to have access to free GED training, another $50,000 for anybody who lives in public housing and below a certain area median income to have access to free community college, up to X amount of dollars for you to get your education, $2.5 million for public housing redevelopment, $950,000 specifically for our African American Heritage Center, for them to be able to have the resources that they need, $250,000 for Townsville Park, African American Park, job training programs, and so forth, as well, in addition to African American curriculum in our local schools. Will we be able to get to a point in which we say every Black person, every descendant of slaves gets a $2,000 check? I don't know. I pray that we could get to that day. How we get there, I'd love to hear from our African descendants of slaves and ADOS and the work in which they've been doing. I would love for us to say that we have elected officials and politicians who are bold enough to say that we're willing to advocate for such. Will that happen tomorrow? I don't know. Can we be strategic in terms of figuring out how to extrapolate resources from local budgets now to get those into the resources of our folks tomorrow, next week, and next month through our local budgets? I think we have a formula for such.
All right, we have. I hear some feedback. I don't know where that's coming from, but we have a student question actually, and it's at the bottom of your screen. It says, "Do you think that some politicians throw around the word reparations to be able to pander Black voters without a real interest in actually giving reparations? If so, how do you think we can know who's really on our side?" And I'll toss it to Representative Jones.
Yeah, I definitely think that's possible, and sometimes the intention may not be to uh, disregard reparations, but a lot of times once you get in office, you find out that the agenda is sometimes not always driven by your personal interests or even by the interests of the people you represent, until we find a way to really overturn um, that and create our own paths in office. One thing I would say about the reparations, though, is that I actually truly believe that we should not rely on the same system that's been, brutally treating us all these years to still give us something. And so when I know Brother Ja'Cory said earlier about issues that we had to deal with ourselves. I feel like we could the same way the Black Panther Party, for example, started a free breakfast program. Back in the day, that was something that they did on their own. And I feel like when we built that sense of community, we don't have to continue to ask the government for something, that everybody else has. Such and such got X, Y, and Z. Such and such got X, Y, and Z. So y'all should give it to us. I think the moment that we continue to give that power to someone who's been treating us this way for all these years, we're going to continue to remain powerless. I feel like we need to go ahead, dig deep within ourselves. We have plenty of Black people that are well-to-do financially. We have plenty of Black people that are brilliant. We have plenty of Black people that know exactly how to work, how to build things. We have Black people that are innovative. And so I think that we ourselves can repair ourselves. We don't have to worry about America doing it because we're all victims of Americanism. And so it's not about, and I see a question just popped up about a debt being owed. I feel like sometimes with me that's kind of just irrelevant to me, that I don't think that we always have to worry about somebody giving us something back. We can't be worried about history. We're all victims of history too. And history is still inside of us, but I'm focused on the present day and our future. And when we're talking about that, I think that is best for us to build that sense of community, figure out what we need to do ourselves and move forward and lockstep, and we will be all right.
And so I'm gonna toss it to Ja'Cory Arthur because he looked like he wanted to respond. So go ahead, Ja'Cory.
Yeah, let me paint a picture of our reality in this country. We are 13% of the population, 37% of incarceration in prisons, 40% of homelessness, over 50% of homeless families. Our kids account for over half of the suspensions and expulsions, and we have less than 5% of the country's household wealth. We don't have any wealth. We don't have any power. We don't have anything to lift ourselves up by our own bootstraps, which is what we've been hearing over and over and over. America, the United States of American government, owes us. And it doesn't make any sense for us to just say to all of our brothers and sisters who are in prison, to all of our kids who are being expelled and suspended from school on a daily basis, to all of our brothers and sisters who live on the streets, who are homeless and have been evicted, it doesn't make any sense to just say, we're just going to let the American government off the hook and not demand for reparations. That is a slap in the face to Frederick Douglass, a slap in the face to Rosa Parks, to Dr. Martin Luther King, to Malcolm X, who have fought and died for us to get our justice claim. We have a debt that is owed. And if the American government doesn't pay it, we might as well just kiss our existence goodbye. There's a wealth report that says by 2053, Black wealth is supposed to shrink to zero. And just to put that into perspective, Black wealth is already around like $1,500. That's on average. So when you take away that $1,500 and we're looking at negative wealth by 2053, we have no choice but to have reparations. Education, Black banking, Black business has been proven over and over by Dr. Sandy Darity at Duke University, one of the leading economists and one of the forefront voices on reparations. None of that fixes the racial wealth gap, which is really like a bad phrase in itself. It's really like the lineage wealth abyss. You can't close it by doing something for yourself. You can't close it with breakfast. You can't tell one of these kids that I visit in one of these schools that have nothing, who are piss poor, who are on the verge of being evicted and living on the streets, that we don't need to demand for a debt that the United States government owes us. That doesn't make any sense at all. We are in a really dire situation, and COVID-19 just advanced it. That was 2053. Now we'll probably have even closer to 2030, which was already rooted to be mass job loss for the Black community. We're supposed to have our jobs wiped out, but COVID-19 just moved that up. We have no choice but to advocate for something. And it's not even something that we're advocating for just for the sake of it. It's owed. And we can't feel sorry for the government that just dropped money in people's bank accounts over 4 weeks. So where's that money at from 400 years?
Mm.
Oh, no doubt. I think can I jump in, Joel?
Of course, please jump in. Go ahead.
So I think what, and I don't want to speak for Joel, but I know him. I think he's saying that we can do both. We can demand for the government to give us what's owed. I think we all are in agreement. Yo, our debt, our stuff is beyond owed to us. Like, the government has a debt they have to pay, point blank, period. But while that process is working itself out, quote unquote, as we're advocating, as we're developing the plans of exactly whom will be identified as the descendants of slaves, exactly which individuals who are currently here will receive those resources, how much of a payment will be provided to us, how the breakdown will be provided in terms of how the states will do so, how the federal government will do so, how the state level is doing so, how the local governments will then provide the resources to us. Like, I agree with you. We just saw the government print damn $2 trillion. You mean to tell me you can't give Black folk our just due? That's BS. We know that they can. We have to advocate for it. But in the meantime, while that process is going on, one thing I think Joel touched on that I think is poignant, and I you're gonna see this. I ain't trying to come at you, brother, but you're getting elected. You're gonna see this yourself. The bureaucracy in terms of how we get things passed is something there in itself, is a monster that we are always trying to navigate. So while you're trying to navigate for reparations in Louisville, while Joel is fighting for it in Michigan, while Candace is fighting for it in Maryland, while I'm fighting for it in Virginia, while Lorreen is fighting for it in Cali, while we're all collectively using our resources to fight for reparations, we still got to figure out how we can help that little brother and sister who you just described in the school tomorrow. Because reparations ain't coming on Friday. It may not even be coming next week, and it probably ain't coming next year either. So what do we do for them tomorrow? How do we help them on Monday? And I think that is the portion in which Joel is describing. I know that's what I'm describing. We got to figure out how we help them in the immediate. Does that mean job training program? Does that mean that we're providing them or equipping them with better tools and resources to have a better education? Does that mean that we're instilling self-empowerment and enlightenment on them so that they can love each other? We know you can't eat love, but I still want you to be able to love each other. I still want you to be able to value you. When I see you, Corey, I want to value you as a brother so that I'm not afraid of you. When I come to Louisville and I see a group of Black men, me as a Black man, I don't want to be afraid of them. And I'm not afraid of my own because I value my own. And I know I've been taught not to fear my own people. My people love me just like I love them. But that's a trained behavior. And I think we can address these things simultaneously. Would you agree in that regard?
You talking to
Or, yeah, I'm talking to you. This ain't no debate either, y'all. I don't want y'all to think, oh, they have no.
It's a family discussion. We just got other people watching us. It's all good.
I think that's the beauty of it. Like, brothers and sisters can have discussions, and I don't want nobody to pit us against each other because that's the.
We're not against each other. Jacory, did you want to answer that? And then we have a couple of student questions that I want to get to since we're in the middle of our social justice boot camp. Again, if there are students watching or people watching right now and you have a question for this panel, please put it in the chat. So Jacory, go ahead and answer, and then I'll take the next question and I'll pass it to Mayor Hollingsworth.
My phone was going in and out. What was the question?
Oh, I was just saying, can you agree that we can do both? Like, we can help our brothers and sisters tomorrow, our young little brothers and sisters tomorrow, in terms of teaching them how to love each other. We know they can't eat love, but we can teach them to value each other. We can teach them and equip them with resources for education advancement, equity investment, in terms of economic advancement and so forth, and still fight for, like, our jobs as electeds, fighting for reparations and so forth. Do you believe we can do both?
Agree that we definitely have to love each other by default. That's just a sense of morale. But to go back and say that we need to teach our kids to love each other really turns around and gives a concept that white supremacists have always used, that we are our own worst enemies. My father, my uncles, my cousins, I got siblings who have served time in jail, who are felons, not because they didn't love each other, but because they had to do something and they felt like their only way to do something to pay their bills, to put food on the table, to provide by a means of crime. The love wasn't the issue. It was because they didn't have
Okay, I think he may have gotten frozen. I think he was going to say it's because they don't have opportunities. So we'll wait for him to.
It's because we got to stop thinking transactionally and start thinking transformationally. Even in Louisville, and people have been mad at me for saying this. We keep talking about justice for Breonna, justice for Breonna. Absolutely. I talked to her lawyers. I've been in spaces with her family, and we need that justice. We need those officers fired. But if you fire those officers tomorrow, you indict those officers tomorrow, it doesn't change the fact that in Louisville, 45% of our kids live in poverty. In Louisville, 58% of our school suspensions and expulsions are Black kids. It doesn't change our conditions and our position in this city just because you fire those officers. That's transactional. We need something transformational. We need something that's going to change not only our kids, but our grandkids, great grandkids. And that's why reparations is important. And I don't think that any of us in local positions or really statewide positions need to push for local reparations. It's a federal government issue because slavery was a federal government issue. And me, in my position, I'm only a local city politician. I'm not even in office. I take office in January. But I've been able to leverage my position to get our mayor, Mayor Greg Fisher, who is the president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, to advocate for reparations and to learn and be educated about reparations. So we all have a role to play in it. Some roles are big, some roles are little, but we all making music. We all just playing different instruments. We're a part of that justice claim. And it's very important that we never let that go. We never let the U.S. government forget, because we paid natives reparations. We've paid Japanese Americans reparations. Do you think Japan's about to let America forget that they locked them in cages, or that the natives will ever forget that they stole land and that they killed hundreds of millions of them? They will never let them forget. And they got their reparations. We cannot let the U.S. government forget what they owe us, a debt, reparations to the American descendants of slavery. Otherwise, we'll evaporate from this country that we built.
I agree with you.
Perfect. Let's go to a couple of student questions, and I'm going to pass it to Mayor Hollingsworth. It says, we have rich Black people, but not wealthy Black people. How do we create our own capital if we don't have reparations? And that is from Kendra. She's going into the 12th grade. She's just using her grandma's account. Can you hear?
It'd help if I unmute myself. Trying to make sure you didn't have any feedback, at least not from me. So I feel like there's a kind of a phrase missing from that question, because you can generate capital and do things with it by, saving and earning different portions like that, but that capital isn't going to sustain for generations absent the infusion of resources that are able to put you in a position where you would be otherwise. And so I think it sounds to me like that question is really kind of leading the audience, is like, how do you do that if you're not even including reparations in the conversation? Like, how do you talk about building, wealth building, if you're not even including reparations in the conversation? And that's one of the things that, like I said, when I mentioned housing and appraisals, it is one of the central pieces of that. When you know that significant number of homes that are owned by Black people are significantly devalued, not just undervalued because, it's in a poor condition. No, it's devalued because of everyone's assumptions about where they live. And then in many cases, it is an intentional devaluation in order to make it a ripe opportunity for investment by private investors to come in to take over an area. So there are, that's substantial wealth that we don't get a chance to tap into. That's wealth that creates an opportunity to have collateral when you want to start a new business, or if you want to purchase a new business, or if you want to, have something that sustains any new entrepreneurial endeavor that you might envision. And so I do think that reparations and actual exchange of cash resources is a necessary part of the conversation about what it looks like to advance an agenda. But also, I agree wholeheartedly that we have to walk and chew gum at the same time. It is like we have to make sure that we are passing policies that that start to do some course correction while also working on the pieces that that satisfy, as you know, as what we talk about, satisfy the debt that is owed to Black people.
Perfect. We'll go to the next question. This is from Samuel. Samuel is 9 years old. Joelle, how many Black representatives are in your district?
Well, so in my particular district, are we talking about like the state of Michigan, how many Black electeds there are in my actual
Well,
district
he
that I
said district,
represent?
but you could give him how many is in Michigan if you want to.
Right. So I mean, it's only a handful of us. Like for example, it's only 5 Black males elected in our legislature out of 110 folks. Less than 20, just to give you a perspective on the entire amount of Black electeds on the state level. Inside of my particular district, I represent 5 communities. My hometown of Inkster has an entire Black council as well as the mayor, so that's 7. There's 1 Black person in one of my other cities in Westland, and that's it. So I would say I have 8 Black electeds that are inside of my entire district. So the majority of my district is mixed, predominantly Black. If we talk about population, but voting population is predominantly white.
Can I add something to that, Lorreen?
Absolutely.
So I love that he's 9 years old and engaged in this conversation. I think that's amazing. I want to give another perspective because you brought this up at the top of our conversation. You know, the adage, skin folk and kinfolk. Not all skin folk are kinfolk, right? And I want to make sure that the young brother understands. It was a young man, right? I believe. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That he understands that, you know, just because people are, you know, Black and they're elected doesn't mean that they're working for what you need. Okay. So I'm in a community, city, Hyattsville, was formerly sundown town. So this is one of those communities that you didn't go to after dark. Our police department was developed when it was originally conceived because it was a sundown town. I'm the first Black mayor for our community. When I first got into office, I was one of 2 Black electeds on a council of 11. Now our council is predominantly Black, six Black. I have a Black chief of police, a Black city administrator, a Black treasurer, and then that's me. So there's a shift in leadership, right? But we're in a county, Prince George's County, which is often touted as the wealthiest minority, whatever, county, wealthiest Black county in the country. Almost all of the elected leadership in Prince George's County is Black folks. So my kids see Black people in power all the time. But can you imagine what that feels like for my son, who is, he's paying attention to what's going on. He knows what mom is working for. He hears my conversations with folk. So he's like, well, why are you still talking about why our school ain't got enough of this? Or why are we still talking about why are you arguing with people about affordable housing? Why is this the first time that we're dealing with, teen centers or investment for young people? Why are you constantly running into walls for things that help us when everybody supposedly be working for the same goal? And that is a very real example of how when you don't have people who are either in office and committed to doing, now I understand that the climate that, for example, the climate that Jacory is getting elected to is very different from even the climate I got elected to in 2011. To even be a very vocal politician about your personal politics and and who you are in this world in 2011 was very different for a politician than 2020. Okay. So even understanding that context, you still expect politicians to operate kind of under the radar and still get all of those things done. They're not even doing that. So it is so important, for you, young man, to see people in office, and it's important for us to set positive examples and be role models, but we have to do that not just by being elected and not just holding the title, but by making it so that you don't sit and question, well, what did it matter that you were there if I'm still trying to figure out how to make sure I have books in my class?
Yeah.
And so that is a responsibility that we all have as elected officials, that we have to take up to make sure that folks, that those questions that my son have, they don't have to.
Perfect. And then we have another student question this time from Amara Hill. She's also a participant in our boot camp. How do you think we get more Black youth interested in becoming politicians and taking roles in our government? Wes, did you see it? I'm sorry. Are you on mute?
I was on mute. My bad. I think there's a couple of things. One, we have to take away the negative connotation revolving around the term politician. Oftentimes people think of the word politician and it's associated with crook or liar or somebody who's disingenuous or something of that nature. And even myself, I'm guilty of it. I'm around the way I'm in the hood. People be like, yeah, politician. I'm like, dog, I'm not a politician. I'm just an elected official. But you know me, you know what's up with me first. So don't ever come at me in that way. And, those are things that I have to work through. I think that we all have a responsibility, again, to show people that the power is in policy. And if the power is truly in policy, which is what the term politician is actually about, then we all should strive to be in these positions so that we can implement and effectively change policy so we can have a positive impact on our communities. And if you all can understand that as young people on the onset, then we can have we can have better communities as you all get to be, quote unquote, our age. Secondly, Joel ran for office and won his first seat, if I'm not mistaken, at 20. So there's no age limit in terms of how you need to affect your community. That's the other part about it. And I'll end this with saying this, this is just my personal belief. Nobody can change my community like I can. I'm not waiting on anybody else to fix what needs to happen. Like, I still live in the hood. People like I still live in one of our last Black communities. People come over our house all the time. They knock on our door. They ride by, they walk by. I'm in the middle of it. Like I say this to Candace all the time. We'll be on the phone and having Zoom calls. People will be walking by. Yo, what's up? Hey, Wes, this happened. Can you help me with this? Yesterday I was in. Anyway, no one can change our community. No one has a responsibility to change your community. No one can do what you can do for your neighborhood like you can. So why beg someone else? The whole reason why I ran for office, I didn't want to continue begging somebody else at the city council meeting to do for my neighborhood and my people what I knew I had the ability and capabilities to do. So let's change this method on what we think about politicians. Let's stop asking people to make decisions for us and let's be the decision makers.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing to see something that needs to change and be in a position to actually do it. Yeah, it's pretty dope, actually.
I feel it.
Hey,
and
we actually, just to piggyback on that, we had a young brother in Michigan not too long ago. If y'all familiar with Michigan, y'all know we got a bunch of potholes. This young brother actually went out and started patching up the potholes with some dirt. Actually, we did he went out and seen the problem and just fixed it. We need more people like that fixing these roads.
Clarify really quickly, how old were you when you first ran for office? Just clarify that for us.
So I was 19 when I first ran, but I did win at 20 because I didn't have a primary actually.
Oh.
I had one other person in the race against me. We had a couple write-ins, but it was just one other person. So we coasted right to November. Now I was 20 by that time.
Okay, perfect. We have Samuel's asking another question, 9-year-old Samuel, because he wants y'all to answer his questions. What types of programs are geared towards Black students who want to be involved with politics or advocacy in your area or in your district or area? Let's start with Jacory. What type of programs are in your area?
Virtually none, which is a part of a larger issue of being politically educated. We knocked on, I would say, almost 2,000 doors, and most of the people's doors we knocked on, going back to the mayor's point, said, "I'm gonna vote for you just because you're Black." And it's so dangerous because, just because I look like you doesn't mean I live like you. It doesn't mean I'm for you. And then furthermore, a lot of them said, "I'm gonna vote for you just because you're a Democrat." Now realizing the danger in that as well. So we have a dire need for political education in our school system, but also for our elders. for our seniors who have been voting for decades and putting some of these politicians in office. And I also just add on to the conversation from earlier about politicians having that negative connotation. It's so sad, and they do what we allow them to do. So that's why it's so important to hold them accountable and make sure that we're having these tough conversations, not only electing them, but also beyond that election saying, hey, what's up now? Making sure you're following through with everything that you promised us. So Louisville, we virtually have none, but I'm working on changing that when
And
I take
so
office.
just really quick, we have about 6 minutes together left over for this call. But I wanted to tell y'all that Black Youth Leadership Project does do political education. We're in our virtual social justice boot camp, so it's made it very real that we can connect with students from throughout the country. So if this is something that you're interested in launching in your area or bringing to your area, let us know, because we can get something up and running, and we would love to. So yeah, let's go back to this. So we've been talking about resources, and we've been talking about things for young people. If you could impart into these young people the importance of leading with integrity, what would you say to them? How would you tell them that they should move in these spaces? And I'm going to direct that to Mayor Hollingsworth.
Yeah, the first thing I would say is to show up in any space that you show up in as yourself. Don't try to mimic or be what you see other people being, because right now there's definitely a celebrity around elected office. And there's nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, it can turn the onlooker can think that means, oh, I have to do like that, or I have to be like that in order to do this work. The movements generally have people that are necessary in all ways, and that may not be as an elected official. You might be the actor, you might, the person that's the protester, you might be a political actor, an elected official, you might be the narrator, you might be the person that is chronicling the movement, the historian through your art, through writing. You might be the person that is helping support it by making sure people have what they need, either the resources, the safe houses, or whatever. But find the ways that allow you to show up as yourself and do that, because that's what's going to make your work more meaningful. And it's also what's going to make you feel like you are not fighting, your true calling, while you're also fighting this external work as well.
Thank you for that. And we have about 3 minutes, and I wanted to get this question in. There's a ballot initiative in California that will allow 17-year-olds to vote. Why is that important to our community?
Absolutely important. We allow 16-year-olds to vote in the city of Hyattsville.
You do.
And it is amazing. We passed that law when I was first elected, and it is one of the things that allows for young people to get involved in democracy very early on, where they will see the folks that they got a chance to elect in the grocery store, at the gas station, whatever. I think it is amazing. And it is a wonderful first step for people to see how they can play a role.
Well,
Oh, I definitely agree. We did a similar thing in Inkster, and we were working on something. Not 16, but 17 out here in the state. I think that's a wonderful thing. As long as you can get people involved, it's something that they can grow into as they get older. So I definitely think that's important. We were doing things simply trying to catch the young people when they're graduating high school to make sure they're fully registered. And now we're streamlining, the voter registration process, streamlining access to ballots. And I think anything that we can do to give people a better shot at actually getting a chance to get a part of the process, we should be doing.
I'm with it as long as it has teeth. I know working with youth, a lot of times you got to incentivize everything. So what's the incentive of them voting? Because in my district, where there are, dozens of thousands of youth, they vote at the lowest turnout. And by lowest, I mean, let's say there's 10,000 youth, we probably have 50 of them between the ages of 18 and 24 that actually go out and vote. So opening up that age range, it might help, but at the same time, we got to put some effort behind it besides just simply opening the door. In a lot of cases for youth, we got to help them walk through it.
Last word, Dr. Bellamy.
Yo, if you can you're old enough to be engaged in the conversation, you should be old enough to have a vote on the ballot. And I think it's important, like Brother Malcolm said, the ballot or the bullet. And in many cases, like we talk about with our Black Party, we believe that the ballot is our bullet. We want to effectively make change. Let's weaponize our vote. Our vote is not to be taken for granted. Our vote isn't free. And we have to, as Brother Jacory just said, encourage and implore, and even in some cases incentivize our young folks to understand the power of our vote and why you have to go out there and vote, make the changes and bring people like himself onto office. We want to see these changes. We want to see more radical, quote unquote, more bold, progressive little P ideas. Let's get some people in office who are willing to push and advocate for such. Don't talk about it, be about it, and let's arm and equip our 17 and 16-year-olds to be able to do so.
And there's a long question. We've run out of time, but we can try to get this last one in before I wrap it up. It says, you may not be able to answer this question, but I like spoken word and write about racism. I want to change the world, or at least my area with that. I'm not sure what steps I can take. Any thoughts?
The first one. Start writing.
Just write.
Right.
Start writing, start producing. Just
Shoot,
take
and-
the first step. The rest of them will keep coming.
And even if you want to do it in the area, shoot, show up to a council meeting or show up to a something like that. And when they do the public participation, just hit them with the spoken word, catch them off guard. You know, it's going to be on the public access channel. People at home should be able to see you. People at the meeting should be able to see you. Have somebody record it and get it out there.
And
Read.
Recent.
Read.
Wes? You said-
Read.
okay.
Read.
Got all them books in the background.
You see, Jacory, I know you're a teacher and you work with young people and in the art. What can this young person do to change the world through her spoken word and writing about race?
Message at Jacory Arthur.
Oh, message you?
Yep.
Okay, you heard him. He said message him. Well, I want to thank you all.
You out here helping people change the world, Jacory? You got the secret.
On the platform here, our protest, we'll be taking submissions from around the country. So yeah, hit me up and we'll launch it.
Okay, so Jacory said hit him up. He gonna launch it, and then he's gonna share it with everybody on the panel so that they can retweet it or post it on their Instagrams and whatnot. And we just gonna get this chain thing going. So I want to thank you all for your time. It's been a pleasure to have this time with you and to allow my students who we spent the whole day with to just be able to be included in the conversation. Can y'all get that off my plate, please? Thank you. And also, I want to invite folks to connect with you, connect with your local people. I know here in California, we don't have a whole lot of younger folks in office that look like us, that vibe like us. And so it's important that when you do see these young people or you see your electeds or these electeds in front of you, that you join into the conversation because they want to hear from you and they want to know how they can do their job better. So with that, thank you all for coming. I appreciate you, and we'll see all of y'all the next go round. Thank you.
Holla.
Thank you.
Holla, holla, peace and love.